Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Side of Sports podcast, where we highlight all the good being done by athletes and organizations to give back. I'm your host, Brian Hartong, and today I am joined by a foundation that was essentially created by a single hat. How does that happen, you ask? Well, stay tuned, and we'll see how a single hat has meant so much to a very special community. And today I am joined by Matt Renie, who is the executive director of the Cincy Hat Foundation.
So it's funny. It all started with a hat, pretty much.
Kind of, sort of. So yeah, I'll try to give like the 2-minute overview. So
Okay.
my mom worked in special ed for 25 years. My brother Jason is developmentally disabled, so he's highly functioning, has lived on his own. But when he got out of the public school system, my parents noticed he really didn't thrive living on his own, just in a random apartment building. He didn't have a support network. He didn't have a community around him. He didn't have the resources he needed to thrive. And so growing up, I met Ted Karras, center for the Cincinnati Bengals, in 8th grade. Ted's family moved to Cincinnati to Indianapolis, sorry, when his dad started the football program at Marion University. So Ted came into our 42-person class at St. Matthew's School. We were fast best friends. And Ted, growing up, had 2 cousins that are nonverbal autistic, that have very high support needs. So, as 15-year-olds, we weren't talking about having family members like that in common. But it was kind of a thing we did have in common. So when Ted was finishing his time at Illinois, about to join the Patriots, that was right around when my mom was launching the Village of Merici, a living and service provider for adults with developmental disabilities. So Ted went over, took a tour, and just absolutely loved it, was really impressed with what my mom was building, and was like, this is my charity. This is the cause that I'm going to support. And so, fast forward 9 years, at the time back then in 2016, Ted was a nobody. He didn't have any fame, didn't have any money, but he slowly he got a couple starting jobs, slowly kind of became something in the NFL. And then his neighbor in Florida is a rep for a hat company, Imperial Headwear. So they are like the gorilla of the golf industry. If you go into any golf pro shop, you'll see Imperial hats. They own like 60% of the golf market. And so they were sitting around drinking by the pool when Ted was about a month away from moving to Cincinnati. And she said, you should make a hat as a gift for your teammates. Just selling hats. That's her job. And he's like, oh, I love that idea. Like, help me design it. Let's do something Bengalsy that's not like, trademark adjacent. And so they came up with the Cincy Hat logo.
That's cool.
200 of them, started passing them out to the guys, and all of a sudden this like mystique around this hat that only the players could get and nobody else could get their hands on grew almost accidentally. I mean, there was no master plan behind it. So one day Ted was talking to a reporter, kind of annoyed that he kept getting questions about these hats, and so he said, all right, we're going to sell these hats, and it's going to go to my favorite charity in Indianapolis, the Village of Merici.
That's great. I read about it while I was just prepping for the show and everything, and that's a very funny story. So your mom founded the foundation?
My mom and probably 2 other families formed the Village of Merici, and so they're an Indianapolis-based nonprofit. They have about 150 people they provide direct services to, so kind of daily living activity assistance for folks that are developmentally disabled, and then they also provide housing for about 100. And so that's where the whole project started, as just a little, I call it like a souped up bake sale for the village. Like, hey, let's, we had this crazy goal of, wouldn't it be crazy if we could sell like $100,000 in hats? And Ted said we need to order 1,000 hats for our first batch, about gave my mom a heart attack. And he was like, all right, I'll guarantee the inventory. I'll buy the rest of them if they don't sell. And so the first 5 hours, we sold $37,000 in hats. After day 7, we were about $160,000 in hats. So for the first 2 years of hat selling, there was no Cincy Hat entity anywhere. It was all just for the Village of Merici. Everything was connected into my mom's organization. And after about 2 years, we had done $2 million in hat sales. And we were like, Okay, this has been unbelievable, and we need to start to focus on Cincinnati and make sure these funds are really going to the Cincinnati community. So that's when we launched the Cincy Hat Foundation, kind of 2 years into the story. So it's been a story, that's for sure. None of this was planned; it was very accidental.
So the Walter Payton Man of the Year in the charity award that he won,
Yeah.
was that right around the time of the launch, or 2 years in, or?
That was about a year in. So we launched November of 22. That first month, that was when it just absolutely exploded. And that first year, we had sold about $1 million in hats. And so that's when Ted got the first Walter Payton Man of the Year nomination. And that caused an absolute flood. That's when I left my job. I worked at a tech startup and had no plans of this ever being my job. But I saw when we were going to get that PR around that award, I was like, oh my God, that's going to be like a tidal wave. And this is all happening right around Christmas. So I pitched my mom. I'm like, hey, let me come work for you for like 3 months. It's just a 3-month stint, but like, let me weather the storm of the holidays. And we sold $250,000 in hats that month when all that got announced. So did you hear it all about the tattoo convention or anything?
No.
Okay. So as part of the Walter Payton Man of the Year, festivities or kind of the stuff around it, there is a fan vote component. So there's the big award that's decided by like Roger Goodell and like the Payton family. So this year that was Bobby Wagner. But there's also a fan vote component, kind of an online popularity contest, very Twitter based and kind of an online voting link. So it's kind of like the popularity contest of the Walter Payton Man of the Year candidates. And so I think Mahomes had won it like the prior 2 years going into it. And, it was peak Bengals hatred of the Chiefs time.
Right.
And I think Burrow had just gotten hurt. So people were kind of down looking for something to rally around. And so Ted, all of a sudden, after like a week or two of the voting, they released weekly updates. And Ted was in like second or third. And people on Bengals Twitter were kind of going nuts on it. And a couple of guys put out there, hey, if Ted wins the fan vote, I'll get the Cincy logo tattooed on me. And Ted calls me that night and he's like, dude, isn't that crazy? Like 3 of those guys said they get the tattoo, and we know him. He's like, yeah, like, Drew and Bangalorian said they were going to get the tattoo. Isn't that nuts? And I was like, yeah, it's hilarious. And so the next day I opened my phone. Well, Ted had retweeted it and said, if we win this award, I'll pay for everybody's tattoo and we'll throw a big party. So all of a sudden Ted wins. And so in the next 7 weeks, we planned 1,000-person tattoo convention. We had 45 tattoo artists come out at the Folding Warehouse in Cincinnati. And I think we applied like 600 Cincy logo tattoos on the community that day.
That's crazy. That's funny. It's so funny how when something like that gets out there, how it just rolls and rolls and rolls.
Oh, and it just evolves so fast. And of course, we're both thinking it's so funny. And we're like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. Do it. And then I had to live with the reality of planning that. I think that's the hardest I'll ever work in my entire career. Planning that event over a 6-week period. It was on St. Patrick's Day, so we called it St. Taddy's Day, and
nice.
that was probably the peak of the project. I don't know if we'll ever eclipse that.
Right. I saw there's a couple other lines, like you have the Flying Pig.
Yes.
Do you guys support that marathon and stuff like that too, or?
That's been a really interesting thing that just kind of came into our lap, is this idea of like co-branding and the hat being a joint fundraiser for other organizations too. Like the first time, that really wasn't on our radar as we started the whole hat brand, but the brand got stronger and all of a sudden Skyline Chili had reached out. It was right around the first Walter Payton nomination. And they were like, hey, could we put the Skyline logo on the side of a hat? I was like, yeah. That was really cool. And so we printed like 300. Those got out there. Then all of a sudden, like schools started reaching out. And so, we had our first collab hat with a school, King's High School. And, these 2 moms who run the spirit wear for King's High School really had the vision for, let's do a Cincy hat with the King's logo on the side, but in our school colors. And I was like, gosh, I think you guys are onto something. We put out kind of an online sale that weekend. We sold like $35,000 in hats in 3 days of King's High School hats. And it was like, oh man. And then that just opened up a flood of organizations, the Flying Pig. golf outings, country clubs, all of these organizations that want to kind of make Cincy hats but with their logo on the side. So I think to date we've done like I think about 300 different collabs with other organizations,
Wow.
nonprofits, schools. So that's been such a cool part of it because it's like the community has felt this project kind of become theirs through those collaborations, and it's just kind of word of mouth marketing and just kind of spreads the fire. It's been, I think we're at about 130,000 total hats sold in the last 4 years, so it's been nuts. I mean, I'll write a book someday.
The one that's cool. I saw Jamar Chase had the hat on during one of, it's part of your website, I guess. You have him with wearing the hat and stuff like that. And I get the players just jumped on board. It's probably helped a little bit at least.
Well, that was the whole thing. Ted just passed out. He brought like 150 hats to spring ball, and it was just a token of his friendship. And he just, was kind of the new guy. It was the first team that had ever signed him to a multi-year deal. So he felt, really indebted to Cincinnati for giving him that shot, and just, wanted to be a good team player. He had been a captain in years past. So, he wanted to kind of be a leader and whatnot. Yeah, he starts passing them out to the guys. Tyler Boyd was one of the first guys that wore the hat in an interview at his locker during a press conference, and I could see on YouTube like all these people saying, "Whoa, where's that hat from? Where's that hat from?" And then all of a sudden Ted's wearing it on social media, and this mystique, and all these people were just kind of like rabid about, how do I find this freaking Cincy hat? And then that led a reporter to kind of do a little expose on where the heck these hats are coming from. But no, the team's been fantastic. A lot of their organizations, like Sam Hubbard, his foundation has done a collaborative hat the past 2 years. The Joe Burrow outing orders hats for their golf outings. We got Joe to wear the hat during one of the fan vote runs. So that'll be like my prized possession, is Joe Burrow boarding the plane to Arrowhead wearing the Cincy hat. He was hurt at the time, but no, it's been really cool. Ted's definitely like the older crazy brother on the team. So I think they all kind of laugh at him about how just out and about he is in the community, but I think they all respect it for sure.
That's cool. So I saw, do you do anything with UC or the Reds or anything like that too?
Yes. So we did with the Reds, we did a collaborative hat with Andrew Abbott, starting pitcher, actually started the opening day game. Right. He is a supporter of the Joe Nuxhall Foundation. So we did kind of an opening day collaborative hat where the proceeds were split between the Cincy hat. I've learned with like teams and organizations and like universities and pro teams, licensing is really challenging, to be able to use their mark on a hat. Virtually impossible. These teams are just all, well, and I get it, right? It's like, I don't even know who owns the NFL trademarks. I think it might be the NFL. I don't even know if the teams really do, but then you've got the Fanatics deals and the New Era deals. Right. And it's like, we had dreams of being in the pro shop, and we're like, that's never going to happen. And that's fine. And if it were in the pro shop, it'd have to be like a $60 hat because they have like markup rules and all that. And then, UC. So when we formed the foundation, in October of 2024, we knew we wanted money to go back to Cincinnati, and we wanted to help the Cincinnati community. We didn't exactly know what was our function going to be. Are we a grant-making organization where people come ask us for money and we give them amounts of money to fuel their programs, or are we going to do things on our own? But we found a group that made it really accessible for us to do some good quick, and that was at University of Cincinnati. They have an amazing college program geared towards adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's called the TAP program. So it's a 4-year college program. It's getting highly functioning teens, living independently on campus, taking college courses. They don't get a full bachelor's degree, but they get kind of a college certificate, but really kind of jump starts them on the path towards independence, learning those life skills, vocational skills, setting them up to have a career in an independent life. So we sponsor 2 young women at UC on full ride programs there. So that was kind of our first act as a foundation, which is really special.
Oh, that's cool. So you just opened something recently, or I don't know how you call it.
Yeah.
I guess opened a new facility in Cincinnati.
Just broke ground. So yes, my mom's organization in Indianapolis, they provide housing to about 100 folks with developmental disabilities, which is amazing. And their wait list is 400. And wow. There is just an insatiable need in the community for affordable housing. And that, there's different housing that different folks need in this spectrum, right? There are folks that need 24/7 support in a group home. Absolutely. That is a need. And thank God there's people out there that do that. But then there's people like my brother that need a safe environment, but that can live independently with some resources and a community around him, but don't need folks, literally cooking their meals and cutting up their food for them, type stuff like that. So we are going at it from an independent living perspective. And our vision and mission is to build independent apartments for folks with developmental disabilities. So we just program. We're starting small intentionally. It's very expensive to build buildings. These are extremely capital intensive projects, and we think we're the guys that can do it. Given Ted's got some money, we've got a lot of fame and kind of notoriety around the project, and we think we can do it. But we're building a 5-unit apartment building right in the heart of Cincinnati and Madisonville. So 4 of those units will be reserved for adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities, and then one of them is going to be reserved for a community resource coordinator, kind of somebody that works in the special needs space, that knows the population, and that is there kind of as an RA, a safety net, a protective function for the building, just to make sure in case of emergency, somebody to help get folks integrated into the community and whatnot. So, the hope is, we want to do that 20, 30 times, and we want to build out a whole portfolio of affordable housing opportunities for the community, but we got to start small and we got to get our feet wet. And, we're playing a 50-year game. I heard a great podcast with Jeff Bezos, and he was talking about the power of long-term thinking. And he said, we always overestimate what we can get done in like 3 to 5 years, but we really underestimate what we can do in 50 or 100 years. Okay. And it's like, okay, like that's kind of where my brain's at. I'm like, I wish we had 50 units already, but we're going to start with 5, and then hopefully next year it's 12, and then hopefully in 20 years it's 200.
So back at the main at Merici, is it a giant facility, or is it like individual housing like you're doing here? Or
it is. The Merici has a 20-unit apartment building. And then they have a 31-unit condo building where folks actually own their own units and their families actually own. So, absolutely permanent forever housing. And then they also partnered with another real estate developer that was building a 160-unit apartment building where they could take advantage of some tax credits if they provided some apartments for good, at below median income levels. And so Merici, they were able to set aside 40 units in that apartment development for folks from the Merici community that could afford those apartments. So all in 3 different developments at about 120 or so total folks. Am I frozen, by the way, or no? Okay.
You were for a second.
Okay. I think what I saw through that journey is they were very patient, and each of those developments took years, right? Each of those individual projects was probably a 5-year journey. We have a little more urgency just given Ted's time and his, status on the team. Like, we got to get this started and we got to get it going. Someday would love to be able to build a 30-unit apartment building, but we don't have $8 million in our bank account right now. So let's build 5 to start and let's get it going. And then we'll learn and we'll see what public and private funding's out there.
Is he local to Cincy year-round, or does he live somewhere else?
So he played on the COVID year. He got signed by the Dolphins. So he went 4 years of the Pats, 1 year at the Dolphins, and then 1 year back at the Pats. But kind of timed it perfectly in COVID. Bought a place down in Fort Lauderdale. So he does, late January to early April in Florida. Little respite, but I don't think he's been in the same city more than 7 days all off season. He was out of the Super Bowl, out of this, out of that. But I'd say he definitely sees Cincinnati as potential long-term home, and the community's embraced him so much. I think he knows like just that community feel, and so many people that love him and respect what he's doing in Cincinnati. Hard to pass that up long-term.
Besides the housing initiative, do you have any other things planned for the immediate future or a little bit down the road?
Certainly fun stuff in terms of like the brand and collabs and whatnot. That's kind of the interesting thing. We've kind of got like almost 5 mini businesses all for a charitable cause running within the foundation. So, we've got our annual golf outing, we've got our hat website, we've got our co-branded collabs. I would say our main focus though is more and more housing. So we are actively looking at buying our second plot of land that we want to build on. It's actually really close by to our first plot of land. So we're hoping to, either build 6 or 12 units there and break ground next spring. So that's kind of where our brains are at. It's kind of like living in the now, selling hats, trying to raise as much money as possible, but also planning out the next 2 to 5 years of real estate developments, because I think we need to kind of provide what this vision looks like and then go to donors and say, hey, here's the exact building that you're funding. Not, oh, we want to build more housing, give us money. Like, no, we're almost ready to build housing. It's this building, and we need your money to do it.
Right. Yeah, it helps if you can show them where their money's going, for sure.
Right. And I think once we have this first proof of concept up and running, we're hoping to open in about October or November. So I think once we have that kind of proof of concept up and running, we'll see. I think it's one of those visions, like I said, super capital intensive. This is a millions and millions of dollar vision. We believe it should exist. And we believe that if you try to do this just by taking debt from a bank, it doesn't really work. Rent would have to be $1,900, and that's so out of reach for this population. So we really think it's absolutely critical to keep rents under $1,000 a person. We'd love to get that more down to like 500 or 600. Just we need to be sensitive to operating costs. And last thing we want is to build this unsustainably, where a major plumbing failure, now we got to rehome 6 adults with developmental disabilities. So kind of balancing that sustainable, smart versus, biggest impact we can have.
The golf outing, when is that, and where do you guys look to have it?
Friday, June 5th, out at Stone Lake Hills. That's on the east side in Batavia. So we did our first golf outing last year. It all came together really last minute. I think we planned the whole thing in like 8 weeks. So this year we got a comfortable amount of time doing it. But yeah, it's blown me away with how generous folks are in the community. Some women on my team, I was like, what do you think a foursome should be? Like $800? And they were like, get out of here. $2,500, no brainer. All of a sudden people are signing up left and right. All these businesses want to get involved. And that's what's blown me away about the project, is just how many folks out there are charitable and want to get behind good causes. And thank God, because that's how all these dreams and visions are fueled.
Yeah, how many golfers do you think you're going to have this year?
We've got, I think, about 28 foursomes locked in so far, and room for 4 more. So hoping to fill it up in the next week or two. So
that's good. Any other players like wanting to get in on the action or whatever? However you call it?
So did you see what Trey Hendrickson did a couple weeks ago?
No.
Okay, so Ted and Trey have a funny relationship. They're kind of like bickering brothers at times. When Trey signed with the Ravens, Ted wasn't super happy about that. So Ted went to Twitter and he retweeted like the breaking news story about Trey going to the Ravens, and he said, "All right, the only way we ever forgive Trey is if he gives $1 million to the Cincy Hat Foundation." And people went nuts. People were commenting that wouldn't even be enough. We'd never forgive him, yada yada. And so like 2 days later is Ted's birthday, and Trey texts him, and Trey had seen Ted had shown Trey what he had put out there, and he's kind of laughing, but like, whatever, dude. And so Ted texts Trey, or Trey texts Ted, "Happy birthday, man." And Ted didn't get back to him next day. Trey's like, "Oh, no response," joking with him. And Ted's like, "Oh, sorry, man, but like, I really just think we could do some good together. I'd really love to have you a part of this mission. I think we could do a lot of good with your capital. Match my $250,000 donation." All of a sudden, Trey's like, "I'm in." Oh, wow. All right, we're getting towards a wire hits like 4 days later. Trey gave us the capital we needed to jumpstart project number 2. We're hoping to raise about $1.5 million this spring to really get things financed to where it needs to be. But that's unbelievable sign of generosity from a teammate, especially at a now division rival. So I will never accept Trey Hendrickson's slander within earshot. No more. I'd love to get Flacco a little into the fray. Him and Ted have become really good buds, and he is just the coolest guy ever. Growing up, like I didn't know much about him. I always kind of thought, Flacco's just kind of like chill guy, but he would come over to Ted's after all the games for his after parties, and he was just the coolest, down-to-earth guy I've ever met.
Huh. Any other teams reach out to you guys and try to do similar things with them or branding and stuff like that?
In terms of like other NFL teams or anything?
Yeah.
A lot of folks have said like, "Oh my gosh, you should go try to do this in another city," or like, "You should do this in every city." And while I don't disagree, there is something there. I feel like a lot of the magic is Cincinnati's insanity. Cincinnati is an insane town full of extremely prideful people that love their city. Like I even look at Indianapolis and I'm like, there's no way this could have happened in Indy. A version of it could have happened in Indy, but not $4 million in hat sales in a 3.5 year period. So it's one of those like chicken and the eggs. Like we have so much more focus on Cincy. There is so much more room for us to grow and to continue to like put out new gear for our people. And the activation of launching in a new city, like it would really need to be like one of Ted's close buddies on another team saying, hey, I want to be like the spearhead behind it. But without that, and like it would have to be a very charitable endeavor for them, right? Like we couldn't go pay another NFL player 30 grand to like help launch this hat. So I don't know. I'm open to the realm of possibilities if the right situation came up. We do an Indianapolis hat for the Indy 500, where all of those proceeds go back to the Village of Merici. So that's been kind of a fun little second side hustle. But for now, we got plenty to focus on. When Ted's done with his career, I could see him going on a little selling pitch to other cities and other buddies in other towns. But yeah, I think something part of the specialness is how Cincinnati based it is.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to duplicate something like that when you have like you said, the perfect situation happened.
We didn't even plan this in general. So it's like I almost feel rotten trying to be like, oh, here's the game plan and here's the blueprint to do it somewhere else. And like inherently, like in any city, there are cool designs of hats that say they're city. Like I'm sure in Columbus, there are some awesome Columbus-based hats. So it's like, I think Cincinnati, there weren't as many, and just kind of the logo was like the logo, I think really was a big part of it. I didn't design it, so I can brag on it. Like without the logo and just the way it was perfectly crafted, like this probably didn't happen anyways if it didn't look that cool. So a lot of people give us a lot of credit, but I think this has been such a community endeavor. I mean, we have 45,000 people that have bought Cincy hats at this point. So it's like, people will be like, what you guys have done. It's like, I mean, I didn't buy all those hats. I did not put my credit card in 52,000 times and buy, what I would probably call an expensive hat at $35. Other people are like, oh, it's cheap, like compared to what you get in the stadium. But I think that's like, I think what this project has taught me and Ted more than anything is just be open to the world, be open to the realm of all possibilities. Like if he had been closed off, if I had been closed off, or if he had been closed off at the idea of selling these and doing some good with it, we never would have started it. And did we have any idea what we were doing when we started it? Absolutely not. I had never built a website. I had never printed a shipping label. I had never made a box with a tape gun. And, I feel like that's been a good learning for me in that persistence and, pretty cliche, but like persistence really is the key, right? It's like, I heard a great quote during a banquet that I went to talking about how, courage is never about taking the big leap. It's about taking the next step forward. And that can be a baby step, but like courage is just saying, we don't know what this is, but let's see. In worst case, we're not going to die.
Right,
okay.
Right.
If people think the hat's stupid and we sell 200 hats and Ted has to buy 800 of them himself, okay, fine. But it didn't happen, and thank God. But I think I do caution people on thinking like, oh man, that could be so replicable. Like, oh, you guys could do this again somewhere else. I'm like, there's an element of magic that is occurring right now, and I don't take that for granted. And I don't want to wish this project away because someday it won't be this hot. Someday people won't care anymore, and that's totally fine. That will probably be a beautiful evolution of this, because then maybe I'll sleep a little bit. But I think allowing people to channel their generosity into something fun and creative and good, that's been like the journey of a lifetime.
And that concludes our episode. Tune in next time where I'll bring you another great organization supporting a great cause. And remember, show your good side out there, everyone.